and basically I had $10,000 to trade. I took it and I started to try to trade my own capital. In high school, I was starting to look at like resumes for colleges and like, what do I have to do? And like, there was this investment club, right? And I was like, oh, well, that would look good on my resume. So I started to get involved, and it was just in the late 90s when the dot-coms were just blowing up. Like, you know, penny stocks at like 2 pennies would be like 10 cents, then 50 cents. It was so altcoinish, like what we've seen, you know, recently. And I turned like my fake 100,000 account into like 300,000 in a month or two. And it just blew me away because again, you know, my allowance at the time was like $1 a week, right? And it was, you know, it was what it was. And it was addicting, right? I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's fake money, but it was addicting in that, can I really do this in real life? And so I was right away like, all right, this is my trajectory. I have to figure out how to be a trader. I have to figure out how to do this for a living. And I didn't really know what to go into in college to get there. So I was like, well, economics is kind of the broad thing, so I'm going to go with that. And so there wasn't really in my head a doubt of what I wanted to do because I knew my end game. I just had to get through it. So that's really where it was. Yeah, so I did in college start to play around, and again, that was kind of like 99-ish when there was some still dot-coms running up and stuff. But I just had a small amount of money, and I opened like an E-Trade account. At the time, they were charging like $30 or $40 to buy and sell a stock. Now it's free. I mean, you know, basically free. I know crypto still charges a lot of fees, but that'll all come down over time as competition comes in. But yeah, I mean, I had no clue what I was doing. I just tried to figure it out. And I think that's where a lot of my mistakes over the course of my first like 5 years of investing and trading, I made so many mistakes, lost so much money trying to figure it out. And then slowly I kind of figured the charts. It all came back to the charts and like looking for repeating things. So I'm very kind of analytical in that way where you notice certain things that repeat and you just kind of play for that. And so it's probability based, and that's exactly what I do. Funny story though, check this out. So I was in my college dorm, I think it was my first year in college, and I bought this pharmaceutical stock, and all it did was like go down on me, right? So what do? I emailed the company. Right, whatever, you know, it's just, and listen, I mean, you know, like delete, you figure like they just delete the emails, but I'm like maybe it was like 2 weeks later, I'm in the communal bathroom, like brushing my teeth, and my roommate comes out, he's like, oh, you got a phone call. So here I am with a mouthful of toothpaste, and I'm like, hello, you know, oh, hello, this is the PPDI CEO. The CEO called me. And like, he must have thought I was like some bigger investor or whatever. But bottom line is like, he just like reassured me on the phone. I was just like barely could speak. I was just so surprised. And he's like, oh, don't worry, we're doing good things. And then, you know, that was it. And bottom line is the stock ended up going up. I made like a small amount of money and I just exited. But just weird stories like that. You don't hear about that these days. Like, you know, Elon Musk is not going to call you on the phone. I remember supply demand, right? So basic stuff like supply and demand. And I remember these proofs that went on for pages, and they made so little sense to me that I just did my best to get through them. And I feel like maybe 3/4 of the class would fail the tests, and me included. And then there would be like this massive curve because, you know, the professor can't have like 3/4 of the class failing out. So we all kind of got by these classes. But I mean, the proofs were like 3 pages long of just weird stuff. That's what I remember, at least. No, not to be honest, not really. You know, maybe supply and demand subconsciously, because you supply, if there's a less supply and more demand, price is going to go up, stuff like that. But really, when it comes to trading, that's a totally different ballgame. Like, we learned about price to earnings multiples and different stuff like that. But in real life, that means to me very little. Like it's all about greed and fear, right? That drives crypto markets, that drives stock markets. It's all about emotion. And then the goal of a good trader is to be able to separate themselves out from emotion and think logically. And that's how you can understand, okay, this is overdone to the downside, too much fear, it's going to reverse, and vice versa. So after college, the job market wasn't like it is now for me. So I basically found a job at MetLife in like the financial kind of arena, right? So I wasn't doing necessarily insurance, but I was doing more like the financial planning. And I came in and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do some awesome stuff and help people invest. And then you very quickly realize that you're like low man on the totem pole, and they're like, all right, get on the phone, make 300 calls, and just call. Here's a list of people, and you just have to call it. And I was like, come on. Like, you know, of course I had to do it, but I hated it. And so literally a year after that, my mom always told me, you got to stay with a job for a year. Otherwise it looks really bad on your resume if you just like peace out. So I stayed a year. On my 1 year anniversary, I quit and I went and basically I had $10,000 to trade. I took it and I started to try to trade my own capital. And I got 50,000 in leverage with that. And I progressively lost my 10,000. It went down.
Oh gosh.
Then I started bartending. I was a bartending instructor. I worked at a cater. So I did all these side jobs just to replenish my trading account and get it back up. I was like, I am not giving up on this dream. Like financial freedom, everything. I'm just not giving up on it. And so, you know, basically for a couple years, I would just lose money and I would just every month put more money in. And eventually the tides began to turn. I started to learn, you know, how to read the market better, how to read charts. And finally, over the course of years of this, it started to click and I started to make money trading. And then once the beautiful thing about trading is that once you learn things, you really don't unlearn it. The market doesn't really change. So you kind of just, you know, your trajectory is like this at first, and then it kind of goes flat, and then it goes like this, and then it just goes up and up and up like that. So yeah, it was a wild trip. I'll tell you, wild times. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those things where like I wasn't going to give up, but the market does give you humility. Like, you know, there were days, and there were countless days, more than I could even count, where I would try something and I would lose. Let's say out of my 10,000, I dropped like 2,000 or 3,000, so 20-30% in one day, and it's just like, you know, it breaks your heart. And you're like, can I actually do this? Am I good enough to do this? Can I ever achieve my goal? And thank goodness I stuck with it. But there certainly was so many days where you just question yourself, like what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening? And luckily I was able to pick myself up and just keep pushing ahead. 4 through 6 that I really struggled, and then it finally started to click in like 2006, and then I started my company in the money stocks in 2007, starting to teach people how to read these charts and do this for themselves.
How did that start?
Knowing it well enough. I mean, it's always a learning environment, right? So even today I'm learning and I'm finding out new things. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, I basically looked at it and I said, listen, there's so many. I mean, I was in a trading room at the time. The prop firm that I traded out of, they let me trade out of their office, and I saw traders come and go as I was trading. They'd lose all their money, they'd leave, then new one come in. And so I kind of had this thinking where as I started to get the hang of it and I started to see, okay, this works, the probabilities of this setup are, you know, 80% success rate. I was like, all right, well, I can actually help people avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made and actually hopefully save them some money. So that was the kind of the mentality of starting the company and helping people learn how to do this for themselves. Yeah, I mean, so that was one of the lucky things about it, just partially luck, right? So we came into 2008 and we had a relatively new company. We were just a year in or so. And luckily we had been warning people that something like this was going to happen. And it was very much where reading the charts, you could actually see the hype, the greed that was out there, much like the stock market in the last year, much like crypto in the last year. It was all there for the seeing. And so I started to say, all right, guys, listen, there's going to be some sort of epic event. This isn't healthy what we're seeing, and you're going to see a corrective move. So we were able to kind of warn people, which started kind of our fame of getting well known out there on Wall Street, and then kind of translated to crypto in 2017, 18, 19, and so forth. Yeah, I have a website in verifiedinvestingcrypto.com. I started it just in 2021 in November, just because people kept on asking me. They're like, you give out these trade alerts, these trade signals on stocks. Can't you just do that on crypto? And honestly, you can, because the charts are the charts. Charts represent human emotion, right? So when someone buys, they're being greedy, right? They're expecting it to go up. When someone sells, they're being fearful. Oh my goodness, it might go down. And so charts, whether it's real estate, whether it's commodities, whether it's stocks or crypto, it can be read in the same ways. The same things work. So it's very cool like that.